Inclusive YXE, the show that highlights disabilities, marginalized communities, mental health, and the organizations working to make Saskatoon and the surrounding area a more accessible and inclusive place for everyone. I'm your host, Skyler Klyne. Today on the show, we have Heidi Fischer joining us. Heidi is the founder of Mental Health YXE, a local social media platform dedicated to providing free resources and sharing lived experiences around mental well-being. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Please share with us where the idea and motivation came from to launch this online resource platform and what struggles you have overcome in your mental health journey.
Absolutely. So I started Mental Health YXE as an Instagram page in 2017. It was during a time where I had just been really having a difficult time with my mental health. I had been a patient at Dubé, and when I came out, I kind of just found myself feeling like I wanted somewhere to express myself, to share with people, what it is that I go through. And then kind of over time, it's evolved into lots of things.
Okay, so do you find a lot of engagement since you launched it?
Absolutely. So that's kind of part of what kind of kept me going with it. I think if I would have started it and just been sharing my own stuff and not gotten a lot of engagement, then I don't know if it would have, carried on. Maybe I would have done it for a while. But pretty quickly on, I got a lot of messages, a lot of comments from people saying things like, I've never heard anybody else talk about this, or I deal with this, and nobody else has ever, shared that. And so they felt like really seen and heard by what I was sharing. And so that really was a big motivator for me to keep going.
Okay, so you also have a website. Can you tell us a bit about what you post on there?
Yes, absolutely. So about a year after I started Mental Health YXE on Instagram, I did start the website, same thing, mentalhealthYXE.com. And, it started because, people would message me and say, could you tell me where this resource is, or this or that, and that sort of thing. So I wanted it to be a place where I could just easily have those resources listed. And that resource page is used a lot. I can go into the background and see how many people have looked at certain pages. And so since 2018, 13,000 people have looked at my resource page alone.
Oh, wow, that's quite a bit. So
Yeah.
do you update the resource page based on what people reach out to you about?
Yeah, sometimes, where I kind of just over time, I'll be like, oh, there's something new in the community, I put it in. Sometimes something goes away, so I take it off or whatever. But I don't list, therapists and that sort of thing, because I don't want to get things to be too complicated and all that, right? So I just kind of list the agencies, other resources that I think people will find helpful.
Okay, so you also do public speaking engagements and pop-up shops throughout the city. I assume our viewers can just go to your website to check out where you're going to be set up, and how do they book you as a guest?
Yeah, absolutely. So the same thing. Yeah, they can go to the website. They can find my email there. I really love doing presentations. So that's something that kind of just also kind of fell into my lap as I started Mental Health YXE. Like I said, it started as a project to share about myself, and then it turned into many things. And one of those things is presentations. So I really love doing them. I can do a presentation anywhere from an hour to 2 hours. I just did a 2-hour one the other day. And community organizations and that sort of thing, they can have me in to do that. And I'm really happy to do it.
What sort of things do you present on usually?
So it varies, because sometimes they'll kind of request a specific topic or whatnot. But very often I'll share my story of living with mental illness, my journey of really figuring out that I had a mental illness, because when I was a teenager, I didn't really know, and it wasn't until, later years. So I talk about that. I talk about the supports that I have found helpful, and, just share a little bit about that, of the supports that other folks might find helpful, and resources as well. And then, like I said, sometimes folks want a specific slant on the presentation, for the workers to have good mental health, or something like that. So I just kind of tailor it to whatever's needed.
So can you tell our viewers a little bit about your journey and what resources you have found helpful throughout?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I often say I think, mental illness kind of I started experiencing it in my life when I was a teenager, but I didn't know what it was at the time. And I think that's a lot of people. And I grew up in a small town. I went to a K to 12 school. We didn't have a school therapist or anything like that. So there really wasn't a ton of resources. I have a very distinct memory of flipping through the yellow pages. I'm old enough to know what a phone book is, and looking to see, who could you see out there? Where are the therapists? That sort of thing. But I didn't go any further than looking at it because I just didn't know. And so, what I was experiencing at the time was depression, but I didn't know it. And it wasn't until I was in my early 20s. I had a teacher where I was going to college, and she was very open about her mental health. She talked a lot about it. She talked about the resources she used. And that was kind of like the safe door that kind of opened my eyes that this is a topic that, we can talk about, that this is a safe person I can go to. So I went and talked with her, and kind of over time, it took a couple months because, these things don't ever happen quickly. Yeah. But I did start seeing a therapist. I did start going to a doctor and tried medication. So in my life, therapy and medication have been, really big, huge factors in helping me to stay well, but they're not the only factors, right? So it's having good friends, it's doing my Instagram or doing my projects that I do. So it's kind of like that, there's that classic thing where they talk about having the toolbox, right? So medication and therapy, those are really important components in my toolbox, but there's many, many different things in there.
Okay, so is that where your artwork and making things like buttons and stickers came in?
Yeah, so, I have always been someone who's been a little bit artistic, and it's kind of a cool question because I often will think about, as a teenager, again, looking back, I knew something was wrong, but I didn't, know where to get support. So one of the things that I did find comfort and support in was art. So really a lot that kind of started for me as a teenager. I was a big fan of The Simpsons. I still am. And so it kind of started off as doing Simpsons drawings, right? And just with my pencil crayons and having fun. And so then over my life, that has just kind of stuck. And so I continue I make art. I like pop culture, so I'll kind of take little pop culture, characters or make my own, and then I usually put like a little mental health expression with it. And so I make stickers and buttons and that sort of thing. And so that's kind of what I sell at markets.
Okay. And many people are uncomfortable, you mentioned medication, seeking professional help because of the stigma of that.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for people who struggle with wanting help but not wanting to take that step?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I feel like it has gotten better as far as stigma is concerned, but it is still out there. And, when I do presentations and whatnot, I do get questions about medication, like how do you ever wish that you didn't have to take it and this and that? And kind of one of the things that I often will say to people is, I view taking medication the same as wearing glasses. Taking medication doesn't change who I am. It just helps me to be the best version of myself. My journey may not be the same as anybody else's journey, but that's what's worked for me. And so if people are feeling, upset or the stigma or whatever the word is, just recognizing that it's just a tool that you can use.
And what advice do you have for people who have family or friends but are not ready to go for help?
Yeah.
Or don't want to admit that they have mental health struggles?
Yeah. I think, I'm the type of person who tells things in story format. So when I think back to that same teacher, I think towards that of what if the person's not ready, that's okay, but what can you do as an individual that would make yourself a safe person or, be encouraging? And so if you talk about your own mental health and the things that you've gone through, or things that you've used and, that might encourage the person to feel comfortable to talk about it or to try things. Sometimes just being curious without an agenda. So just asking people questions, but without saying like, I'm asking these questions to make you go to the doctor. Just, I'm asking these questions because I just want to know what's going on with you. I think those are some really good suggestions.
All right, so definitely just be interested in their lives, but don't always give suggestions on how they need to fix it, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
Is there anything final you want to share to our viewers?
I'm not sure. I think, I just really appreciate the opportunity to come here and chat. I love doing presentations, so if folks are interested in hiring me for a presentation, I'm really happy to do that. And if you'd like to come see me at a market, that's really great. As well as throughout the year, I do a variety of projects. So this will be the 10th year where I'm collecting gifts for the Dubé Center at Christmas. So you can always go to my Instagram page and find out more about that. So, either hop onto the Instagram, hop onto my website, and you'll see what I'm up to.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming into studio. I definitely appreciate having you take time out of your busy schedule.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for watching Inclusive YXE. I'm Skyler Klyne. We'll see you next time as we continue exploring the people and programs building a more inclusive Saskatoon.